Okay.
All right.
Hi. Hi, Larry. Welcome.
Hey, Andrea, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for joining me on my podcast here today, Awareness in Motion.
How exciting, huh?
Yeah, it's so exciting that we've got this technology over there. It's 5 p.m. yesterday, and today it's midday for me. And we're live on two platforms at once. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
it's
brilliant.
like Pinky and the Brain. We're going to take over the world.
Yes, we are. And
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about today. The future of the Feldenkrais method.
The
I'll let
future
you have
is
a little snippet.
now.
Yes,
Sorry, I was saying the
now
future is now. Yeah.
it is. So, did you want to share a little bit about yourself and why you're so passionate about the future of the Feldenkrais method and why we're here to talk about that today?
Sure. Oh my gosh. Where to start? Well, I did my first Feldenkrais lesson in a training about Gestalt therapy, learning to become a Gestalt therapist 43 years ago. It's
Wow.
kind of hard to imagine. That was my first encounter, and I was just like, what is this stuff? I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And so it's been a lifelong journey. And when I met Moshe, I was, well, let's just say impassioned, inspired by his dream to, broadcast Feldenkrais throughout the world. I was also really kind of intrigued by Buckminster Fuller. So Bucky Fuller, the inventor of the geodesic dome, he also had an idea about using technology to communicate.
Mm,
His idea, though, was to use cable television.
mm,
And because the interesting thing was the remote control gave you a way to interact. So you could
yeah.
use it for education. You could give people questions and they could respond. And you could use it. Now think about this. This is in the 60s. You could use it for voting,
Wow.
right? But what was interesting about that, in as a compliment to what Moshe said, is it was two-way communication.
Mm,
And that's the thing that really interested me. And like that's the thing I love about being here with you because I get to see you.
yeah.
You know, in my younger life, I was a professional magician, and so I've like been on TV and been interviewed and made commercials and talking to a camera where you can't see the other person.
Mm,
That's such a different thing. So here that we have the possibility to connect,
yeah.
that's really exciting. And so in my I think it was about, oh my God, 10 years or so ago when I thought, how could I make, I think so I've done almost annual summer camps for the last 20 some years since I moved
Yeah.
here to Santa Cruz. And one year, it just turned out that several people couldn't make it. And I thought, well, why don't I do it online? Now, mind you, this was a while ago. So
How-
online meant like audio only, right?
Yeah.
So like audio broadcast. There was no video channel or none that I, as a, in my little endeavor could afford. So that was my first class, I think, was teaching online. And oh my God, it's been such a journey. I mean, the Wi-Fi didn't work there, so we had to use
Was it
the
dial up? Oh,
no, it wasn't quite that bad, but we ended up using the cellular network and then it totally collapsed. I mean,
oh no.
Murphy's Law I have been through like so many, I used to think that I learned about heartache and loss and disappointment in my emotional romantic life. And then I met the internet. Oh my gosh.
Mm,
So it's been a long time coming, and now that technology is so much better,
mm,
right? I mean,
yeah.
think even when we met, right? We couldn't have done this.
No, gosh, I don't even think I had a mobile phone. That happened a
I
few
had a
years.
mobile phone, and it was one of those where you had to like tap several times when you were sending an
Oh yeah,
SMS, a text message, and you would limit it on how many characters you could send and how. Oh my gosh!
so long
I,
ago.
I remember sitting in a pub in Adelaide
Yeah.
one Friday evening, and there was a big round table of, I'm guessing, you know young women, girls in like high school, and they had the paper open, and from the other, like I was looking over, what are they doing? And it looked like they were trying to decide what to do for the evening. And so each one of them was texting someone else, except for one young woman. She was like texting on two phones at the same time. I was like,
Skills.
yeah.
Before social media, that was.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Proto social media. Well, it just goes to show you we don't need social media. We can connect in all these other ways.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to welcome everyone that's listening, both live here now and on the podcast, on the replay. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. Make sure you let StreamYard allow your comments so that we can bring it up on the screen. It's pretty cool that we're able to do live on two channels at the same time. Mm. So, what is next
Wow,
for you?
I see in the comments people I know from all over, including Philippe Leblanc, who's one of my litter mates from my training, who lives in Montreal.
And Madeline?
Madeline from Australia, Kaya, who lives down the street from me, actually.
The whole community is here. Welcome. It's fantastic to see you all. Mm. Questions I have is, what is next for the development of the Feldenkrais method? What are your thoughts
Wow.
on that?
Well, let's start with kind of the big picture,
Yeah,
I think, right?
yeah,
Um, so like I, the Feldenkrais method is an ongoing project, right? When Moshe Feldenkrais died, he wasn't
mm, yeah.
finished. He was still developing
No,
the work. And pardon me?
yes, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, I believe that too.
okay. um, sorry. And so I think, like, I think that's a great thing because it means we
Mm,
get to contribute. So the question is, how do we contribute? How do we continue in a Feldenkraisian fashion? And what are the
mm,
directions in which we can go? So, I think there's some growing edges. I think, one is how we deal. So we tend to talk about awareness and action.
yeah.
And I think a lot of us have come to consider attitude and emotion and the role that that plays. I mean,
Mm,
not that we're therapists, but, learning is an emotional process. And so as teachers, I think if we're not attuned to where our students are emotionally, I mean, if they're
yeah.
curious or bored or annoyed or whatever, then we're just performing. We're not helping them learn, right? Because they are wherever they are in the learning process.
Mm,
So I think how we incorporate that is important. I think for me as a teacher, I've always been curious about the social aspect of learning, right? I mean, there's a kind of, well, if you'll pardon me for saying so, I think in one of the classic styles of teaching awareness through movement classes is it's kind of like, come in, lie down, shut up, do what I tell you to do, learn something, go home.
Yeah.
Right, so that there's not a lot of interaction with the teacher or the other students, and I know we all have to learn for ourselves, but I don't think it means that we have to learn by ourselves.
No.
And so I think, before I was a Feldenkrais teacher, I was a magician and a community organizer, and I don't think I've lost either of those.
Yeah.
But I think a lot about how do we create situations where we can learn from and with each other.
Mm.
And look, here we are. I mean, this is a way of doing that, not just in broadcast mode, performance mode, but also in interactive mode.
Mm.
So, like with Zoom and the ability to create breakout groups and
Yeah.
and 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 to think about how you structure, like Feldenkrais talked about awareness through movement as, creating an environment for learning. Well,
Mm-hmm.
so, as a teacher, I think about how do I create environments for learning with the students, for the
Yeah.
students. So that's something that I think excites me. And look, I mean, I know this is just a
It
horrible time, right?
is. Yeah.
But one of the things for me personally and professionally, being able to connect, like we've just had these spontaneous conversations
Yes.
about what we're doing and supporting each other. Being able to connect with people in the AY Day group that Quan
Mm.
Wang put together years ago, that
Yeah. Exactly.
having my study buddies,
Mm.
there's a way that even though, like, I think what people tell me, and what it fits my experience, is that they say, oh, I'm so surprised how we can make meaningful connection even though we're far apart.
Yeah.
Do you find that? I mean, I know you're doing
Yeah.
some interesting stuff.
Well, what- um, I mean, that's the main reason I've had my online program now for 3 years. I've still got a lot of the same students I started 3 years ago with. And I had a teachable site. They'd go in and they'd do their courses. We had a Facebook group for communication. But I've recently moved my group to a Mighty Networks platform where we have a forum within the platform and we have our courses. And that's what you're going to come and speak to on a couple of days' time. I'll put the link up in a minute for people to come and join that fireside chat where we can have these conversations. And that's the main reason I wanted to create that community. Part of it's free to bring people like yourself in to have those ongoing fireside chats to, explore the work in all of the different aspects that the work has for us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm. And it was surprising to me that so many of the practitioners, we had to shift online last year. Everyone had to pivot. And for me, I was like, finally, my colleagues are coming online and they realized that it wasn't that hard in the first place. It's like, why are we holding back so much? And still some of them haven't. So I encourage you, if you are watching, you haven't shifted online, I can help you do that as well. But bring it online.
Well, look, I don't think that replaces what we had before, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it can, but it gives us phenomenal ways of working with people. I mean, and like new opportunities.
Mm.
You know, I don't think you could take an online class and kind of, I mean, I'm sorry, a live in-person class and just plop it into an online space. And well, I
Yeah.
think you can, but then you miss what's special about this situation, right? And
Yeah.
how people can work together.
Mm.
Pat, you asked how you see all the participants. You don't. You just see the two of us because
Yeah.
we're the only two participants here. It's just an interview.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks. I was about to answer that.
yeah,
Yeah, you can't take away from the in person, but at least we have this format that we can still connect with our students and students all around the world. So, mm,
yeah, yeah. And look, I mean, like I have we have a colleague who lives in the Northeast who's been teaching Feldenkrais classes for years, and um, his name is Uwe. He's from Germany, and he lives in Vermont. And it's winter. It's here. It's awful weather there, and his classes have never been so full. I think he's teaching several classes because people don't have to drive anywhere,
yeah,
right? And so and that makes it really easier. And people are funny about driving. I live in a small town. I mean, really, and like I traveled to Adelaide to work with you. So like I always wonder why somebody here they like don't want to cross the river from the west side to the east side because it's too far to travel.
mm,
So I think we take that difficulty away. And though like
mm,
teaching online, I don't get to hear the breadth of the class, follow
yeah,
all the non-verbal aspect of the
yeah,
sound environment, but I get to watch people in a different way,
yeah,
and what I've learned over time, there's a different way of teaching class, of the language that you use, of the rhythm when you're teaching in this environment than when you're teaching live.
yeah,
And then there's opportunities to have, like, so I've been interested in the interactive part, that of classes, not as a demand, like everybody has to do it, and not as something you do every time, but as what ways can people learn together? So, like, for instance,
yeah,
the hooking the big toe series.
yes, love that one.
Yeah, that one. So yeah, me too. So one thing I do with that, I've done this in trainings and in my classes, is that the context for that series is something like putting your socks on or taking your shoes on and off,
Mm,
right? Just so that it's the lesson is situated in everyday life and it's stickier that way.
mm,
And we keep coming back to it over the series. And at one time, what I have people do is sit back to back. I'll just
yeah,
do it this way, back to back, and feel the other person behind them doing it.
mm,
And we start with simple things like them guessing which leg the person is taking their, is holding up in the air. And that's pretty cool. People are surprised they can tell that.
yeah,
Right. But also if you kind of set that up at the beginning and then they come back at the end, you can feel how someone's changed without even looking. So I mean, that's what happens when you're together. There are ways, not the same, of course, but where we could do things like that here, where the students get to take the lesson off the floor,
yeah,
which I think is really important because otherwise, what happens on the floor stays on the floor. Otherwise, look, the habit is going to return. I mean, you know, I
yeah,
have been accused of saying that our
I
job is to prepare prepare the student for the return of the habit. So, I think about like how can we do that in our classes? So here, I mean, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
that there are so many wonderful ways of engaging people in learning, not just doing during a class, but in between classes.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and having them in a community forum like I've got with my movement academy, that's possible. I can put post prompts up, I can share videos, and there's that hybrid form of learning. And I mean, that's one of the points I was going to make about the future of Feldenkrais is going to be hybrid. We need to have both live and online. Um, yeah.
Well, and look, I think it's good if we have the choice of either one and the choice of both.
Yeah.
Right? All three choices, I guess. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Online, in person, or both. And I think hybrid
Excuse me. Excuse
excuse me. I think this hybrid situation allows us to create continuity,
me. Mm.
right? I mean, look, I think what we have to offer. I don't want the future of the Feldenkrais method. Yes, Kaya, I can. To be kind of like, I don't know, like Spotify, where we have just a lot of content.
Mm.
Because I mean, I think that's important, but I think what I believe in I don't know if this sounds too heavy, but I always think of the phrase the sanctity of live teaching, right? The interaction between the student and the teacher.
Mm.
And this allows us to have that in a way that we didn't before
Mm.
necessarily. So I think that that's really important. And I think that's the value that we add, both in classes and in that talk about hybrid, you know, let's call it an online FI lesson where you work with somebody individually and you're
Mm.
not in the same physical space. I mean,
Mm.
that's an amazing,
Yeah.
amazing way of working with people and of helping people realize they can help themselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's lovely. Lovely to be able to do that. Um, One-on-ones. And if you haven't tried it, go try it, ladies and gentlemen listening. So Kayla
Um,
did ask, is that the right time to ask, can you elaborate on preparing people for the return of their habit?
yeah, I can. Once upon a time, I used to think that a Feldenkrais lesson was kind of like a magic trick, right?
Yeah.
You do the lesson and then poof, your habit disappeared. And
Mm.
actually, I remember, I think I was in Sydney teaching an advanced training. And like the second day, the first question was, well, why do lessons not work? And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And the person said, well, I do a lesson, I feel different, and the next day, it's gone.
Mm.
And I thought about that, and I thought, well, look, when we learn something successfully, it becomes automatic. The autopilot takes over. It becomes a habit. So
Mm.
habits are not a sign of a failure; they're a feature of our system. And I think, oh, look, sometimes, yeah, you can do a lesson and it is amazing. You're just different.
Mm.
But most of the time, I mean, a lesson isn't a pill. It's part of a process.
Mm.
And part of that process is forgetting. And part of that process is that the thing you've learned comes back. So, um, if I pretend it's not going to come back for me, then I'm annoyed when it returns. And for my student, well, they're disappointed in themselves. Maybe they think they're a bad student or they think the method isn't that good or I'm not a good teacher. But the fact is, it's going to come back.
Mm.
And when that habit comes back, I think most of it stick a little like oh shit post-it note on it, like oh shit, it's back. But the thing is, it's before it came back and your head hurt or your neck hurt, your back, or you felt tired or you felt whatever. But now all of a sudden you realize, oh, it's not something that happens. It's something you're doing. And that is actually the beginning of learning.
Yeah.
So I think our job, Kaya, is to tell people, like, I can help you find new ways of moving, and then I can help you learn to make them yours. And the fact is, the way that we're put together, yes, our nervous system can change, but
Oh.
I mean, just think if it changed with everything that, everything you read or saw, we need stability and continuity.
Mm-hmm.
So what's great about the Feldenkrais method, it's a method for working with your habits, for, like, I don't think we get rid of them. We become aware of what we're doing. We learn that other options are available, and then we are able to make choices. And that's a process, and that needs a coach, a teacher, a guide, and that's what we do. I think the, I don't know, the Feldenkrais wizard routine, it just doesn't interest me. It's not the relationship I want to have with the work or with people.
Mm. Mm.
All right, Kaya, I hope that was useful.
Yeah. I still have such ingrained habits from my ballet training, which I didn't do for since 3. I did for a few years, not like some dancers. And I find myself in the middle of lessons keeping my rib cage straight, because of that. We had to be so straight and up and down. And it was in that holding the toe lesson that it came about for me. I was like, why can't I do this? I'm flexible, because I was holding my spine and ribs so rigid.
Right. Plus, if you're holding yourself up, how can you fold?
Mm.
Right. So, and the interesting thing about that is that, so, it took me a long time to come to this formulation. I would like someone to investigate it because I think you could in a laboratory. But when we talk about a habit, what we're talking about, right, is this unconscious neurophysical response. And,
Mm.
and and here's the way I think about it. The habit gets triggered at the same time as the volitional action. So the thing you want to do and the habit happens at the same time.
Mm.
And so if your habit is to hold yourself up and you're trying to fold, you're arguing with yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you don't even know it's something that you're doing because you just feel like, oh, I'm stiff,
Yeah.
right? So I think what we could do is help people realize, oh, I mean, it's not that you're stiff or stupid or uncoordinated or ungifted.
Mm.
Is that the things you've learned are interfering with doing new things?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of the human condition. But what Moshe figured out, what Dr. Feldenkrais, the founder of the method, figured out is that we can use the built-in processes that we have for learning
Mm.
to, I don't know, I think about it really as learning from our habits and making friends with them.
Mm. Mm.
So look, I'm curious. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that was 15 years after doing Feldenkrais as well. It wasn't like in my first years. I was thinking, how is it still happening after had been doing the practice for so long?
Well, okay, so I think that's a really fair question, and like some of that has to do with our. I think there's two sides of that. One side is our expectation,
Yeah.
and the other side is our practice. So I think we've been led astray by this expectation that like a lesson is like you take a lesson at a prescribed interval, pop another lesson, and something
Yeah.
magical is going to happen. And I think, learning engages the learner. That's how we learn. And this idea that, our habit might be unconscious, but when we're talking about developing awareness, that means developing awareness, well, of what we're already doing, of what we can do so that we have choices. So I think I don't think that lessons just, you come in, you lie down, something happens, you go away, and you're magically different.
Mm.
Um, and then I think that has to do with our practice, right? Because look, we
Yeah.
know that there's two different parts, at least, of learning. One is learning something new, right? Because if you ask somebody, how do you learn to move? What people usually say is practice. And I would say, well, how do you practice something you don't know how to do? Right? So practicing is not how you learn, it's how you get better. So
Yeah.
Feldenkrais is about learning something new, but where, and this is the other part of the growing edge, I think, where we've fallen short, and like in our own expectations and with our students, it is like the scaffolding, the support that we give
Mm.
people in the process of learning. I don't think it's about just giving content, but it's about accompanying people on their journeys, like
Yeah.
their plateaus, their dead ends, their wrong turns along the way,
Mm.
knowing what that process is like and being able to help them through that. That
Mm.
that's a different formulation of the method. And I think that's also for me part of the future of the method.
Yep.
Both helping people discover new choices and then going through that annoying process
Yeah.
of confronting your habits and
Yeah.
finding choices. And like the method's not about being somebody different,
No, we know
right? The
that.
grain is in the wood. You have to love who you are. You have to make something beautiful with the structure that you have until this point in time.
Yeah. That's come up quite a number of times in my conversations. Those that don't know, I also help Feldenkrais practitioners, wellness practitioners bring their practice online, and we've got a community, and that conversation comes up all the time. How do we market this method that most marketing's like, oh, you have to have this so you are sexier, become more beautiful or become something, when we don't prescribe to that. Have you got a comment to
Well,
that?
look, I I I I think of the method as so look, I'm a kinesiologist, right? I'm a movement scientist,
Yeah.
which basically is a really nice way to say I have a PhD in PE, right? I'm a physical education teacher. I say neurophysical learning is what we do,
Yep.
but it's what the method is. It is lifelong learning as you continue to change, because the first few years we call it growing up, and we call it growing old, but your body keeps changing.
Yeah.
So to be able to keep up with that, that's what the method is about. And
Yeah.
also, like when we were talking about habits, the problem is when you think you got it made, right? You think you're doing really well because your habit, whatever you learned, is going to the world will change and you'll be stuck with the old behavior.
Mm.
So how do you keep learning, well, somatically in a body wise way? That's what the method is about. I think it's about, self education.
Yeah. Um, let's bring that comment up. Donna.
I
Yeah.
saw that.
Yes. Mm.
Yeah, I think in the context of what we're talking about, Donna, that like think about the small moment in an ATM lesson, whatever it is you're doing, and you're doing the movement, and then there's that moment where you hold your breath, or you push, or you try just a little harder. I, I think that comes from some feeling like whatever you're doing isn't good enough, right?
Mm,
And so we enter into this domain. We're back to the feeling part here, of shame and blame and guilt. Like I'm just like,
mm,
whatever it is, I'm not like what you said earlier. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not sexy enough. I'm not flexible. It doesn't matter. But the thing is, you can't be someone else. So
no,
that moment when we strive, or when it's like we push as if we don't believe we can learn, right? I think that moment is
mm,
the rich moment in learning, and I think that's the place where, if we think that change comes from trying to be different,
mm,
it's like we don't even know what the hell we're doing because we're sleepwalking.
yeah,
So the biggest transformation is to wake up.
mm, yeah, great. So I'll just mention what Donna said. You have to love who you are. Yes, I'm a bit troubled by the way the word transformation gets used in the Feldenkrais world. Mm,
Yeah, look, you I mean, we got to start from the place that you're good enough.
mm-hmm,
I mean, this is what we have to work with. And pretending we're someone else, or like just not, I don't speak of this lightly. I mean, I'm not someone who came to the method because I had difficulties or troubles.
mm.
Though as
Me,
I've gotten older, and in the recent years, I've definitely, like I don't know how I make it without the method. And even, before
mm-hmm,
all of this stuff, just traveling around the world, I traveled 100,000 miles a year for
mm,
25 years. How I wouldn't have done that without the method, without my practice.
yeah, I'm the same. I didn't come to the method out of pain or discomfort. I came to improve what I had already. And same as you, I've had some really traumatic experiences in my life. And I know how close to that edge I was. And without the method, who knows where. That's saying a lovely comment here. The aha moments it truly creates shift. Shift happens. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things to say. Shift
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Play on words with that one. Mm. So I think this might be a good time to invite people to our further conversation we're going to have in my community. So I'll pop up. This is what's cool about this app here. And then you can talk about your offer, Larry. Movement Online Academy, if you go there, join up, go to the events section. We have a fireside chat with Larry, so you can come and chat directly with myself and Larry. He's going to put his fire on. It's going to be a real fireside chat, and we can continue this discussion as a community. So I'd love to invite you there. And Larry has something he wants to share. Oh, you're on mute, Larry.
Um,
Should I mute
the
you?
most, right? Like, how many times have we heard that in the last year and it wasn't said before, right? You're on mute. Um, I was pouring my tea, and I know one of my friends is on here, and it just really annoys him when I do that on the mic, so I put myself on mute. You know who
Yeah.
you are. Hi, thinking about you, love you. Anyway, oh, I'm gonna distract myself. Yeah, I wanted to say something before I talk about me. Just that
Yep.
I think what you're doing is really important, Angela.
Thank you.
Like my my interest is in Well, I really had to narrow things down to be focused because the moment my energy isn't what it used to be, I feel like an old jalopy with the gas tank the size of a VW Bug. So, I am marshaling my resources. And for me, like the things I'm interested in are, well, being a teacher and then helping people who are teachers become better teachers,
Mm,
especially the people I've been working with over the decades, right, who have invested time in learning the
yeah,
models I've developed. And there's thousands of us. So I'm kind
yeah.
of focusing on that. But like I think what you're doing is really different than what I'm doing. And that your ability to kind of provide the stepping stones for people to be able to, because it can be so daunting to
Mm,
deal with. I mean, to err is human, but to truly harm requires just a computer. I mean, you can make such messes. It can be it can be really scary, and it can be an incredible maze. So I so value what you're offering, and I know because you're doing that with some people. I know some people who study with me,
yeah.
and people really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing too.
Well, and
Yeah.
like here we are, like we're continuing something that we started in oh my gosh, now what was the name of that town where the training was?
Adelaide,
No, outside, the little town.
semaphore.
Semaphore, yes. Here we were. So Angela was in a training that Alan Questel and I directed. It was at the one of the greatest venues in the world. We were at a restaurant facility, social public facility where people got married and stuff. And when Susan Hillier and I had been looking for places to do the training, it was like this place is never used during the week, during the day. So I
Yeah.
just thought, and we're like just out on the water, and there's a restaurant. It was such a great place. But who knew that we
Yeah.
would be here,
Yeah.
right?
And such an old building that one was too.
It's
Very
probably
old.
still there, don't you think?
Yeah, it's still there. Still,
Yeah.
people still, yeah, it's a great place. And every time I go there, I think, obviously, of the training. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think of that, and I think of Ollie Black, who lives down the street from there. So, hi, Ollie, if you're here. So, look, let me tell you about what I'm up to. So,
I'll pop that up now.
yeah, so I'm teaching a new class starts next week. It's a year-long project called the Bodywise Project, and in it, I'm teaching 3 trimesters of ATM. Each trimester has 14 classes. And because, we don't want it to be exactly the same, each trimester is a little different in how it's set up. Like the summer is half weekly classes, half a 5-day summer camp. So we get to do an intensive.
Mm,
And the class, it's a public class. So it's open to anyone. I teach the class twice, one day after the other, so I can span the globe as much as possible. But like I said, I don't want to just provide content. I want to support people in their learning. So the way that we're going to do that is every few weeks I'm going to have meetups with the students where I can talk to them and interact with them. And every uh, that'll give us a chance to talk. And then with every lesson, people are going to get a little learning boost. So a few days later, they'll get a short video that'll give them
nice.
some way of integrating the lesson. And just like on your site, there's a discussion group so people will be able to interact. So
Great.
the idea is to make something where, like I said, just because you have to learn for yourself doesn't mean you have to learn by yourself. And it's kind of like a menu. You can pick what you choose. Along with that, there's an advanced program for Feldenkrais teachers where we'll meet 5 times every trimester and we'll like take a deep dive into the lessons,
Right.
look at what's behind them, apply them to what people are doing. And everyone in that program will get the transcripts of the lessons as well so they can teach them.
Fantastic. Great offer. And you saw that Ellen, she's sitting in semaphore right now.
Oh, yeah, Eileen, I forgot. Hey, Eileen. Cheers, Mike.
How
And,
fantastic.
you know, Katerina, oh, I didn't put the I'm teaching a workshop actually next weekend. So Katerina Hom put that in the chat. I don't know if people can see that. That's a
I'll
really long link. Yeah, there we go.
That's on Facebook. So I'll pop it in the show notes below the videos for everybody on YouTube or listening on the podcast. So I keep mentioning the podcast. I'm turning this into a podcast. Part of my community, when you join, you actually get the fireside chats on podcast. We had one a couple of weeks ago with my online marketing students who we discussed whether we use the word semantics in marketing. Great conversation there. So when you join up, you get a link to subscribe to the podcast on your phone, which is another cool app that I'm using for my classes as well.
What's that app? I'm sorry.
It's called Hello Audio.
Hello Audio. Okay.
Yeah. So I pretty much just upload my audios and send the link out to my students, and they can subscribe on any of their favorite podcasting apps. Not the public ones like Spotify, but the other podcast apps. So pretty cool.
Cool.
Just reach out if you want to know more about that. Yeah. So I guess we probably should wrap this up. I mean, I could talk for hours.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if any of the folks at home have a question they would like us to address before we hang up.
Yeah. Or wait around for the comments, because I think that there is a delay in when we speak to the listeners. I think we've covered everything that was on my list here to discuss, and some more. It's been fabulous having you on, Larry.
Oh, I could say also on my website there's free accounts, and there's free lessons there. So if you go to the website, you can sign up for those.
Yeah.
I'm going to be teaching one more program starting just in at the end of the month, and
Yeah.
that's going to be a year-long program about doing FI, and that'll be online. It'll be 3 5-day segments, and then a monthly follow-up, and then study group with the people who have already done these segments as part of my Mastering the Method program. And I'm kind of both with my ATM class and with that, I'm picking the same theme, which is breath. So my first ATM theme is it's a matter of life and breath. And the year-long project is you're going to learn 3 FIs about breathing better. And you'll be able to work with them online and in person. I do demos, online. There's videos, and then part of that course is I work individually from afar while people are giving lessons. And we're putting a really cool video together about that, so you'll see that soon.
Awesome. Oh, sounds amazing. So I'll pop the link to your website as well.
Thanks.
Later. Doesn't look like there's any questions.
They know
So,
everything. That's great.
yeah, they know everything. Oh, here's Larry's website. Thanks, Katerina. Mind in Motion. on -online.com. Lovely.
It's so funny when I first created the website, I wanted www.mindinmotion.com, and
Yeah.
and somebody else owned it. So I
Yeah.
approached them about buying it, and they said they'd be glad to sell it for $17,000. And I thought if I added, let's see, online is 6 letters and a dash. I mean, and it was like prescient because here I am working online. Oh, thanks, Kaya. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I did the same with feldenkrais.com.au. I added online, so I've got feldenkraisonline.com.au.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and here we are,
and here we
right?
are.
It just worked out that way. It's so cool. Sometimes things work out.
They do, they do. Everything for a reason. And that was a lovely comment, Kaya. You're like a master chef in how you layer and structure your class offerings. A little exquisite snack all the way to the big feasts.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Well, feats. Well, at least she didn't spell it with two E's, right? The big feats.
Roll feast after she's put up roll feasts.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, look. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I look forward to having an interactive chat with folks
Yeah.
and seeing some of the people.
Oh, there's a
Um,
question. Great.
they no, at the moment they're not because I'm not making. So somebody asked. I don't know who that is. Um, somebody asked about buying the videos for Ideas in Action, the trilogy, and Anatomy of a Workshop, and unfortunately, they're not available. No one's making the videos. I know that we were talking about putting those online, but that's kind of a big process. So I'm going to be teaching Mastering the Method and the teachers program for Bodywise next fall. I'll be teaching the trilogy online
Yeah.
and live, perhaps if that's possible. We'll see. So there's more coming, but right now those things are just not available.
You're like me doing so much. It's always hard to fit everything in.
Well, look, I'm using that as an opportunity to like everything I'm doing with other people. I've
Yeah.
created kind of a fellowship program so that I'm doing work exchange with mostly younger, less experienced Feldenkrais teachers because I want them to get a handle on how to do this by doing it. And I
Right.
think we're stronger together. So for me, working in these ways is pretty exciting because otherwise I couldn't do it all.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, let me know.
Very interested. Well, let's wrap this up. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being the guest. I have done a couple of interviews. This one is the one that I want to turn into my podcast audio. So that will happen in the next couple of days. Super Townsend, interested in your work on prayer. How does it come about? It sounds really interesting. Did you want to answer that before we wrap up?
Well, it came okay. I can make a short answer to that. There's a kind of classic Feldenkrais lesson, the prayer lesson that Feldenkrais created a long time ago. It was part of my training and other programs,
Mm.
and I thought it was really interesting. And I so it was that was part of the inspiration. I'm also really curious about what it means. Well, there are two connections between prayer and awareness through movement for me.
Yeah.
One is both of them have to do with physical acts that change our consciousness.
Mm.
So I'm really curious about that aspect, and I think like we were talking about before, like a lesson not being a pill, but learning being a process. That means that this is a practice. It's something that I do not as a remedy, but that I do regularly. That supports my ongoing learning. It doesn't fix what's wrong. And
Mm.
so I think both with prayer and with ATM, they are physical practices
Yeah.
for developing ourselves. And that's like that's my path. I mean, I liked of all the meditation I did, I liked walking meditation. I like to move. And so, some people say mindful movement, but for me, the point of Feldenkrais is to act differently in the world, to change myself and the world. And I think, that it shares something with prayer. And
Mm.
so for me, without reducing one to the other, I was curious about that. And I was really curious about the constraint, if you will, of holding your hands together and learning to move around that. And I have had my own really misery with my hands in the last 10 years. And part of those lessons really came out of my own practice and exploration. So there you
Awesome.
go. Thanks for
I love
asking.
That's a great way to wrap this up. Thank you. New ways of being in the world. Awesome. Well, thanks for those that listened in live and are listening on the replay. I appreciate you joining us, and hopefully we see you in the fireside chat in a couple of days. If you can't make that, that will be available on a podcast as well. And any last words?
Well, somebody did. I don't know who that is. So whoever you are, thank you for mentioning my writing. I have a blog. I write regularly. I'm going to start a podcast too. Well, I'm going to continue the podcast I started, but I my aim is to talk about what's happening in the community contemporaneously in the moment.
Mm.
So, please read the articles and if you have questions, just write to me. Larry at the website address is my email. I'll get
Yep.
back to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Larry. I'll pop that below so people can contact you. And thanks everyone for coming. And I'm going to end the broadcast now. You can also reach out to me if you have any questions about either my community that I'm running or my online marketing program that I have. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Angela.